Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at SoberCoffeePod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Mikey runs on Dunkin'.
Man, you bring the donuts, right? You bring 6 donuts. I'm trying to watch what I'm eating.
I know,
right? And yet I feel bad because you brought the donuts and nobody's eating them, so I had 2.
Oh, well,
I'll probably have a third.
Thank you for being so concerned about my feelings.
I know, absolutely. It's all about donuts. That. It's all about donuts.
Yeah. Hey, you good? You all good? I know. Define good.
No, I know what good is.
Okay, are you good then?
Yeah, I'm good.
Define good.
Good is good.
Okay.
Good is okay. I'm
this
okay.
Is why we're not. This is why we're not Rogan. Okay,
no,
he goes a little deeper than that.
No, I don't think he does.
Hey, you ready to go a little deep this morning?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, great.
What do you got going on?
Got a table for 3.
I love it.
Yeah, Erin. Good morning.
Erin, good morning. Erin's in the studio.
In studio.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. It's so good to have you. So, I'll kind of blow the end of the story. Spoiler alert. Elizabeth. And you are really good friends. Elizabeth's been on the podcast a bunch, and we love having her. We're going to get her back soon. But something happened along life, and you and I were talking in a meeting, and I'm like, come on, girl, we got to get you on this podcast.
Absolutely. I was so excited. I know when Elizabeth did it and a couple of our other friends, and when we had ran into each other, I was pretty much like, so when are you going to have me on your show?
I'm like, giddy up. Let's get caught.
I'll tell you who said that is we did this for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And my sponsor says to me, he goes, what's up? I'm like, what's up with what? He goes, you've never invited me. I'm like, dude, you don't need an invitation. Like, you don't need to be invited to my house. Just come on over,
That's right?
And so we had him on a couple of times, but he was like 4 years in. He's like, what's going on?
Yeah. So you chair a meeting. We were at a meeting you were chairing, and I'm grateful for that. You know, I always say, or try to say in a meeting, thanks for keeping the doors open for us. And I really do mean that, because they're open for me. But even if it was locked when I walked up, I'm okay, because I probably gone to a couple meetings prior in the week. But you're open for people that are very dear to my heart, that I'm waiting for them to come into the rooms. These front doors are open for the next generation, and I appreciate your service for doing that.
Oh, thank you.
That's really important.
Yeah,
so
really
what meeting do you chair?
I chaired the Thursday 3:30 Grapevine meeting. When I first came into the program, not knowing or understanding really what AA was, I could really relate to all of the personal stories in the Grapevine magazines.
Right.
And they have a different theme every month, and all the stories are either based on steps or traditions or personal stories. And I literally lived off of all the ones that were free for about 6 months.
That's a great idea. As a matter of fact, you just spurred me. In our resource room on our website, www.sober.coffee, I'm going to put a link to the Grapevine where people can get access to that, because
absolutely.
It did. I forgot about that, but my 6 months, I read a bunch of those articles. I was like, okay, I can relate to that story. It was really good.
Absolutely. And on the website too, I'm a member on there, but they have all different kinds of other resources and books. I got a couple. There was one, the women of AA, that talk about all the women that aren't spoken about, that they should be, and I'm not making it about that, but about how the Grapevine started, and all the women that helped, Bill and Bob through that period back in the 1930s, all the way up until the now. So, but they have all different kinds of books on there too, and it's an amazing website, and the women who run it are really great. So,
yeah. You bring up a great point, though. The women in recovery for me have been deeply impactful. I mean, there are a handful of women who I've been deeply impacted in my road to recovery, and I love it. Right, I love the mix, but it's still 80-20. It's still 90-10 in many cases. It's still 95-5, which breaks my heart, because there is so much value. There are women's only meetings, which I recommend for people that, like, if I have women that come into my life that are searching and hunting, I say, get yourself to a women's only meeting. I've never been invited myself, but I don't know what the deal is. It's pretty inclusive.
I'm not even sure what I can say to that.
But no, I think it's, to me, a great amount of value has been brought into my program by women, just because they speak to my heart and speak to my soul. And
absolutely, I started going to some women meetings when I first came in, and they were great, and they served their purpose for me for a little while. But I appreciate being around an atmosphere where I know that there's men and women in life, and I need a bit of both.
Right.
I do, and that works for some. And it worked for me when I needed it in the beginning, but I wanted to branch off and have reality is that we all live together on this planet.
And the reality is this, that you and Mike and Erin, today at this very moment, we're at this exact same intersection.
Absolutely.
And we're just trying to be better humans, better wives, husbands, family members. We're just trying to not drink. We have the exact same priorities, and we are at the exact same intersection today. It doesn't matter if you're a gal and I'm a guy. It doesn't matter.
100%. 100%. But I enjoy the banter between the guys and the girls, and the crew that I hang with. I mean, I'm friends with a lot of different groups and a lot of different people, and I just love it. It's fun. It's fun to bounce off different stuff with different people, and it's just a different vibe.
Yeah. So two things. First of all, I do notice that you are very actively involved in what they call the fellowship, just the fun part of AA. Mm-hmm. And I see your name all the time at the club. You host at your house, which I think is remarkable. I just think that's a big statement. Hey, come on, man, you need a place to stay.
Open house.
Here's my backyard. Let's come have a bonfire, right? And it's just great alternative activities for anybody on the road to recovery. Tell us a little bit about what got you in the rooms. And you don't have to go into big detail. Just tell us what got you in the rooms, a little glimpse, so that we can appreciate where you're at now.
Absolutely. I came in the rooms. My sober date is August 23rd of 2022.
Wow.
So, hopefully...
COVID.
Yeah. It was actually right after COVID. And the fellowship was opened. It was closed, I think, about 6 months before that. And then they reopened, so thank goodness. I always go back and forth with, the nature-nurture thing. Alcoholism does run in my family very largely on my mom's side. There's not many of us left. But I didn't grow up in an alcoholic home. But like I said, as before went on air, I have my older sister is 24 years sober, and my younger sister is 12 years sober this year.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So one went through the program for a few years, and then my older sister did not. She just did a cold turkey. Obviously, extreme circumstances brought them to where they were.
Right.
And the same for myself. I was a self-stuffer with everything, very passive for the first probably 30 years, 25 years of my life. And I didn't start drinking really till about my mid-20s, a little bit the end of college. And then all that stuff that I stuffed when I did drink, it all started to loosen up down there. And, anger and aggression and rage was a big part of my story. And, that got me in trouble in relationships. And I struggled. I struggled with self-esteem. I struggled with, things that I never dealt with when I was younger, other traumas that I had gone through. But situations that I had put myself in that I was drinking that I'm actually just starting to now talk about again, talk about for the first time. And, eventually had an incident with my significant other and ended up getting arrested and spending a night in jail. So for me, that was, sitting in that jail cell and, just completely defeated. There was just no remnants left of the person that I was. I didn't recognize myself. I was terrified. It was, I was a teacher. I was a teacher for 25 years almost. And I look at I sit there and I still can feel, the lights going on in the jail cell. And not that I slept.
Right.
Certainly did not. But I remember the lights going on and just being like, Erin, we're done with this. You're done. And that was like, and I didn't realize anything or know anything about, the spiritual awakenings or anything like that. But a good friend of mine, one of my other really good friends, Arnie, in the program, he's like, Erin, that sounds like a spiritual awakening. And I'm like, well, whatever it was,
It was.
It was.
And that was your moment?
That was my moment.
That was your
and I
moment.
was done.
Wow.
You know, I couldn't go home. I stayed with my parents at 43 years old for about 4 months. I was pissed off, but I think that was the best thing for me. The codependency and the drinking with significant other at home. If I would have went back into my house, I would have went back. I would have drank, and it would have escalated.
Yeah.
So I really got to separate myself and really focus on
Focus on yourself.
for those 4 months. And coming back was like just a completely different world. I went in, I got back home, I said, Mom, I know we got a big book around here somewhere from the family.
Yeah, right.
It was an old edition,
Yep.
and I didn't understand it, but I got a therapist, and I said I want to go to a meeting. I didn't have to by the courts. I had to do anger management, which I needed.
Right.
But, you know, I volunteered. My parents drove me to all my meetings, and God bless them.
That is awesome. That is awesome. A couple things. This is what I love about the world of recovery is that aside from the detail you told my story, I mean, that
I was just thinking that myself.
No resemblance of the person that we were, right? I mean, you told my story, and the details are different. You told my story, and that's why I can believe that in you because you're now living on the other side of this. And the other thing I want to say is I literally got 6 big books in my life before I came into AA. They went on my nightstand for a moment. A cousin, a friend, or my wife bought it, and all 6 of them went in the trash.
So they're all handed to you?
No, they all went in the trash. I threw them away because I knew better, but I was in that same dark place that you were at, and it was uncontrollable, and I couldn't stop myself from doing it. So.
Yeah, it is a crazy feeling. But as soon as that happened, after I was like, we're done, and I say we are done because in my head I'm thinking all the other personalities that I had going on with my drinking, we are all done, Erin, all right? Everybody, you got that up there? You know, the alcohol and the obsession, that left me then.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah.
That time, I was blessed with, you know, the ability to not have that obsession craziness of the alcohol after that day. Maybe once or twice I felt it.
Sure.
But, you know, for me, it was dealing with all the intensity of all the emotions coming back after so many years. And, you know, and that was like all at once. That was the hardest part of everything, you know, and obviously transitioning back into my home and trying to get that, you know, back in order. But this was by far, the rooms were wonderful. It saved my life in every way. The people I've met, the service work that I do, my parents, my siblings, my family is wonderful. Everything kind of came full circle. And
you mentioned your therapist, which I loved. I did that my first couple years of recovery. I went to a therapist, and for the first time I was honest, right? And I said, I'll do whatever it is you tell me to do so that I don't have that rock in the road. So like you said, you had to deal with the raw emotions. I had childhood trauma as well. I had to deal with that, but it wasn't as painful as I feared it would be my whole life of drinking. Does that make sense? My whole life of drinking, I drank because I didn't want to deal with those emotions and those memories and all that was going on in my head. Really, at the end of the day, processing through that logically with clarity wasn't that difficult. I mean, it was painful.
But from the outside, before that,
I thought it was going to be
mountain.
I thought it was going to bring me to the brink of death.
Yep.
Dealing with those, you know.
I do want to just make a clarification. Like in my household, I didn't have any childhood trauma. I wasn't abused. I wasn't anything of that sort. It just, you know, other factors, aftermath. But, you know, for me, that's stuffing stuff down.
I love that. Yep.
You know, I always talk about when people ask me, and Elizabeth knows I say it all the time, when people ask me, you know, what is the number one thing you get out of this program? And I said, I get, I just forgot what I...
Like a...
mental weight loss. Sorry.
Okay. Mental weight loss.
Mental weight loss. You know, for me, for my story and stuffing all that and holding things in, going to
carry weight.
Gets heavy.
I mean, like just the brow. I mean, everything. You know, and going to therapy, covering all my grounds there, getting a sponsor, going to AA, talking, being completely raw and honest. The relief that I felt. The relief that I felt when I was in jail and I said I was done. That was a big relief there.
Sure.
When I, went to therapy, it was a huge relief there, telling my story and my first meeting. My mom dropped me off, and I know in a meeting you go there and you wait till everybody else talks, and then you wait till the end.
Right.
I went in, and I raised my hand first, and I said, I'm like, I'm ready, and I literally spoke for like 20 minutes, and these men all let me sit and just like diarrhea everything out of my mouth,
right,
and I
right.
cried
Awesome.
and I laughed, and I get out, my mom's in the car, and she's like, so how was it? And I go, God, this was great. And she's crying, and she's like, oh, thank goodness, you know what I mean? And I was hooked. I was like, I need more of this. I need to get it out, and I felt so wonderful. And I still want that. I still want more and more and more and more. And when I do this, that's what I feel like, and it's
Who do you want it for? For you? Do you want it for your kids? Do you want it for your mom? Do you want it for your sisters? Who do you
me
want it for?
100% first. But obviously everybody around me
Benefits.
is benefiting from that. You got to go into it, head on. And I know people talk about being selfish. I think you should always be a number one priority in life, no matter what.
Sobriety.
But obviously, in the beginning, it is so important for me. Because, we all talk about, if this isn't okay, if you're not internally okay or mentally or emotionally okay, nothing else can come in and work in your life.
Right.
And I truly believe that, because it has.
Yeah, so I love what you said about the mental weight loss. The way I look at that is, the way I describe it is I have weights on my shoulders, of over the years, every lie you tell, every time you try to manipulate everything, every drink you have, it's just more weight. And for me, it wasn't, I didn't have the spiritual epiphany where I woke up, like I sponsor a guy who says, man, I knelt down in my bed at rehab and I was saved and life was great. I'm like, what? Like, that didn't happen for me. But it was progressive. So as much as my alcoholism got progressively worse, my recovery becomes progressively better. And as I worked through the steps, it was probably 1, 2, and 3. I started living differently. 4, 5, that helped get, talking to your sponsor and getting the dark stuff out. That was like, wow. Like, I didn't think, like, where'd that come from? I swore I would never tell anybody that, right? And it's funny because when I worked with therapists, they're all rehabs and everything, they're all like, well, tell me about your childhood. And something happened. I'm like, no, I had a great childhood.
I know, right? They're like, no, tell us. Come
I
on,
was forced
something
to go to
happened.
church and like, wow, you're not being honest. I'm like, stop that crap. I'm like, nothing happened. And so, but then came the 8th and 9th step. And I mean, my 8th and 9th step, but it took time. It took years to get there, 4 or 5 years. I forget exactly. But I had enough living amends by that point that made it easy. And every time, just weight after weight after weight came off. And so I can really relate to that mental weight loss. So I've lost a lot of mental weight.
Yeah.
And living the AA steps, you don't put a lot back on.
Right. Erin, steps important to you?
Absolutely. I was excited to do 4 and 5 because I'd already felt that release from all the other things that I had already done. So I know everyone thinks I'm crazy when I say that, because a lot of people are fearful of that. But I had already felt that, like, oh my gosh, and when I had like pages. I was like, this is fabulous, And I keep my first ones that I've done, and I do them every maybe 6 months to myself. When I first got out, I did it, and I did the big sheets. There were so many ridiculous things on there because I was pissed off at the court
Sure.
system. I was pissed off at my lawyer. I was
Right.
pissed off, But gradually, every 6 months when I would do it, I would, I look back and I narrow all these things down of all these
Right.
resentments and things that happened. And there's still those core, a couple, 2 or 3 things that are big things that are still on that list that I still have to work with.
Right.
But I went from this, you can't see because I'm on the
Right.
radio, but,
5 feet.
5 feet all the way to,
3 feet, 2 feet, 1 foot.
right,
Yeah, right.
and I'm still working on those things. So I've narrowed it all down, and I know what specifically I still need to work on, and that helps me. It helps me stay balanced. It helps me stay on top of things. I keep step 10 in my pocket all the time to deal with things as they happen, whether if I need to make an amends to somebody or if somebody steps across the line
Yeah,
with
right,
me.
right.
I was always a very quiet, very passive person, and I would say everything is fine. I'd say everything is okay, and I wasn't. And it wasn't fine, and it wasn't okay.
Yeah.
And there's those resentments, and there's that anger. So I step up in a positive, calm way for the most part. I've done a lot of work on that. Or making amends right away and dealing with it as it comes. Because I know for me that my relapse will happen if I start to store that stuff again. My body will remember that pattern, and that's when I'll it'll get to a point where I'm stuffed, and then I'll go for a drink.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting. I'll throw red flags at myself when I start thinking the way I used to think when I was out there using and drugging, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, all right, you're thinking that way, so something's gone off sync here,
Right.
and that's when I got a sponsor, Don R, and he'll constantly, every time I see him, any new resentments, any new fears, right? So I thought fourth step was really one and done. I was fearless and thorough. I had 5 feet wide sheets.
All right.
I wrote everything, and because I was told it was going to be a one-time thing, and I didn't want anything to fall through the cracks. But my old sponsor moved to Florida. Now, by the way, he didn't check with me or anything. He just up and moved to Florida.
You didn't get your permission?
No, not at all. So I got Don R, and
Great guy.
Don R keeps me on my program because life isn't just about doing the 12 steps and you're done, you've graduated, you move on to the next thing. It's about working those, like you said, keeping them in your back pocket.
Absolutely.
Saying, do I have any new resentments today? And that's important because that little resentment can grow from a little nugget to a big rock, if it's left unattended.
Absolutely. And obviously being surrounded by, you fine folks, Elizabeth, who is my best sister, lover, I just love her to death, having that huge support system that they talk about to coming in and building your support system. And, I that is another huge thing for me, being connected, staying connected, being involved, hanging with friends, just never feeling like you're alone, always having a place to go. And when I welcome people into my home and I do these things, I want people to feel safe. I want them to have a safe area to come to, and that makes me happy.
That's
as
great.
well. I truly enjoy everything about the program. And my sponsor's awesome. Love you, Hillary. And
That's fantastic.
I love Hillary.
Believe it or not, our coffee time is we got people bumping up for our table. So we're almost done. Can you come back next week? Because I want to kind of unpack a couple things that you said.
Absolutely.
And we'll just talk a little bit more about sobriety.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
I love this. This is
Thanks for
amazing.
coming
All
out.
right. Isn't it fun? All right. Sounds good. See you next week.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.
Stay safe in the city of Chicago. Beautiful city.